Okay, we've come back to multiplying radicals. In the last section, we actually just kind of did some basic multiplying radical problems where we had just regular monomials and monomials multiplying them together with, same indexes and the same radicands, remember a number underneath a root. And then that's it. We can only multiply the same radicals if they have the same index, right? And we can then figure everything else out. In this particular instance, we're going to have, say, the nth root of A times the quantity, say, the nth root of B plus, say, C. Okay? We're going to have just this. We're going to have a monomial. We're going to distribute it with our binomial. And then we're also going to have some binomials and binomials. Oh, man, we're going to have to make some boxes. Oh, yeah, reminiscent about the past. Okay? So here we go. Let's get to some examples. Let's first two up here. Again, I have a monomial here times a binomial here, so I'm going to distribute through. So let's multiply this. Negative 4 times a 1 out front, which is negative 4. The square root of 45. 15 times 3 is 45. It's a plus. 4 times 5 is 20 times the square root of 5. Now let's figure this out. You might be like, well, we're done. Well, not necessarily, okay? I got to make sure I'm done. Well, this 45 is 3 times 15 and then 3 times 5. So that's really negative 4 times the square root of 3, 3, and 5 plus 20 square root of 5. But now we have a pair of 3's because we have a square root. One pops, the other one doesn't have a friend or doesn't come out to play or something like that. I don't know. Whatever your analogy is for that. So we get a negative 12 root 5 plus 12. Now let's go to number 2. Multiply, distribute. Well, this gives me 4 root 5 plus 5. You might ask, how did I get a 5? Remember we talked about in previous videos, when I have a root 5 times the same root, I get just the number inside. Or if you don't believe me, it's really 4 root 5 plus root 25. Well, what's root 25? Haha, it's 5 again. Booyah. So I get my answer as 4 root 5 plus 5, and I'm done. Again, you can write it as 5 plus 4 root 5. It doesn't really matter, but you're done. So that's multiplying a monomial times a binomial. Well, let's do one example first. Before we do that, let's go to number 4 here. We got to make sure we understand what's going on. So when I take a monomial times another monomial, the numbers outside multiply. So negative 8 root 2, okay? And then when I take this times this, the negative 2 and the negative 3 multiply to get a positive 6 root 4. Well, what is root 4? That's just a 2, so that kicks out with the 6. So it's negative 8 root 2 plus 12. 6 times 2 is 12. Okay? Remember that the roots multiply with other roots. The number, the coefficient, multiplies with the coefficient. Okay? Coefficients with coefficients, roots with roots. Don't intermix the two. Okay, here we go. Let's do this. Let's do a box for number 7. Let's do a box for number 8, and let's call it a day, I guess. How do I know I'm doing a box? Remember, this is a binomial and a binomial. Some of you might do FOIL, and that's okay. Some of you might do distribution property, and that's okay too. I like to do a box because it's very visual, but again, whichever floats your boat. So 3 minus 3 root 2, 3 root 2 plus root 2, right? So 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times negative 3 root 2 is negative 9 root 2. 3 times root 2 is 3 root 2, and negative 3 root 2 times root 2, if you remember, I'm just going to do this real quick, that should be a negative 6. Some of you are like, what? Negative 6? Well, remember, it's negative 3 root 2 times root 2, which is negative 3 root 4, which is just negative 6 because that's just 2, right? 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Booyah! So now let's combine. 9 minus 6 is 3. Negative 9 plus 3 is minus 6 root 2. That is your final answer for 7. Let's go to number 8. They're not always going to work out like that. They just happen to on that one. And they might on this one too, but not always the case going to happen. So let's make a box. -1 root 5, 1 minus 3 root 5. 1 times -1, -1. 1 times root 5, root 5. -1 times -3 root 5, 3 root 5. -3 root 5 times root 5 is -15. -15, you ask? Well, here's how. It's -3 root 5 times root 5, which gives me -3 root 25. Root 25 is 5. 5 times -3 is -15. Oh, yeah. Combine -16. Combine plus 4 root 5. Again, they're not always going to work out that nice. You just got to kind of go with the flow here. Let's do number 9. This will be the last one that we do, and then we'll get to the next video here. Again, we want to make a box because we have 2 binomials. 5 root 2, 2 root 3, -3 root 2, and root 3. So let's multiply first numbers together. That makes -30. Okay, if you're not sure, use your calculator, plug it in, it'll give you -30. Okay, next one gives me -6 root 6. 2 times -3 is -6, and then 2 times 3 inside roots are 6. This one here gives me 5 root 6. And then root 3 times 2 root 3 gives me 6. Because root 3 times root 3 is 3 times 2 is 6. There we go. Combine gives me -24. And combine here gives me a -1 root 6. Or you can rewrite it as -24 minus root 6. Either of those answers are correct, and they're both fine. Again, watch the video again if you have problems. Take notes. Do work. Be successful.